There are moments when everything becomes too much. Not just stress, but messages you haven't replied to. Work you haven't finished. People expecting something from you, and suddenly you disappear. You stop replying. You delay calls. You avoid people who care about you, not because you don't care, but because facing them feels impossible. So the question isn't just why you're overwhelmed. The real question is, why does your brain decide the safest option is to vanish? From the outside, it can look confusing. People might think you're distant, unreliable, maybe even careless. But inside your head, something very different is happening. Your mind becomes crowded. Every unfinished task feels like pressure. Every message feels like another expectation. Even small things start to feel heavy. So instead of dealing with one thing at a time, your brain sees all of it at once. And when the mental load stacks high enough, a strange shift happens. You stop responding. You tell yourself you'll reply later. Later becomes tomorrow. Tomorrow becomes next week. And the longer you wait, the heavier it feels to come back. Now the problem isn't just the message. It's the guilt, the explanation you owe, the fear of disappointing someone. So disappearing becomes easier than returning. Not comfortable, but easier. Psychologists sometimes call this avoidance coping. Not because you're weak, but because your brain believes distance will reduce emotional pressure. And strangely, in the short term, it works. When you close the app, or ignore the call, your nervous system relaxes for a moment. But that relief creates a loop. A loop we rarely notice while it's happening. It's easy to think this means something is wrong with you. That you're irresponsible. Or emotionally unavailable. But in many cases, disappearing is not a flaw, it's an adaptation. Your brain learned that when emotional pressure becomes too high, withdrawal protects you. This pattern often develops in environments where being overwhelmed wasn't safe to show. Maybe you were expected to handle things quietly. Maybe asking for help wasn't welcomed. So your brain found another strategy. Reduce exposure, reduce expectations, reduce interaction. If stress is a storm, disappearing is like hiding in a quiet room until it passes. The problem is, modern life rarely lets the storm pass quickly. To understand why this happens, we need to look at something called the threat detection system in your brain. Specifically, the amygdala. Its job is simple. Scan your environment for danger. But the brain doesn't only treat physical threats as danger. Social pressure can trigger the same alarm. Criticism. Disappointment. Letting someone down. Your brain can interpret these as threats to belonging, and belonging is survival. So when overwhelm rises, your brain shifts into a freeze and avoid mode. Not fight. Not flight. Freeze. Think of it like a computer with too many programs open. Eventually, the system stops responding. Not because it's broken, but because it's overloaded. Your brain does something similar. Instead of solving the overload immediately, it shuts down interaction. Avoidance lowers immediate stress signals, but it also leaves the original problems waiting, which is why returning later feels harder. The brain now associates those situations with threat memory, and this is where the cycle begins. Avoid, temporary relief, growing pressure, more avoidance. Breaking this pattern doesn't require becoming someone new. It requires retraining how your brain interprets pressure. Here are 4 principles that help. Reduce the all-at-once illusion. When you're overwhelmed, your brain compresses everything into one giant problem. Psychologists call this cognitive overload. Your working memory can only hold a few pieces of information at once. So when there are too many, your brain defaults to shut down. What helps is externalizing the load. Write everything down, not solutions, just the list. Your brain relaxes when information moves from memory to environment. Example. Instead of thinking about 10 unfinished things in your head, you write, reply to Sarah, finish report, schedule appointment. Now your brain sees separate tasks instead of one giant cloud. Lower the social re-entry barrier. Often, the hardest part isn't the task. It's reappearing. Your brain imagines long explanations. But social psychology shows something surprising. People usually respond positively to simple honesty. Instead of explaining everything, try a low-pressure message. Hey, I've been overwhelmed lately. I'll respond properly. Soon. This works because it reduces uncertainty in the other person's mind. And once uncertainty drops, social threat perception decreases for both of you. Interrupt the avoidance loop early. Avoidance becomes powerful because of negative reinforcement. Use them for avoid something. Anxiety drops. Brain learns avoidance works. To break the loop, you only need tiny exposures, not full solutions, just contact. Example: if replying to a message feels overwhelming, send a reaction or a short acknowledgement. This tells your nervous system, interaction doesn't equal danger. Over time, the brain recalibrates. Build pressure release valves. Your brain handles stress better when it has regular outlets. Without them, pressure accumulates until shutdown happens. Simple activities like walking, journaling, or quiet thinking help regulate the nervous system. Not because they solve your problems, but because they reduce baseline stress levels. And when baseline stress drops, your brain has more capacity to face things instead of avoiding them. Integration. You can think of overwhelm like water filling a container. Messages, expectations, responsibilities. They slowly raise the level. Disappearing is your brain flipping. The lid closed, it stops more water from coming in, but it doesn't lower the level inside. The real shift happens when you do 3 things. Lower the pressure, release small amounts regularly, and keep the container open just enough, not perfectly, just enough. Quiet empowering close. If you've ever disappeared when life became too heavy, it doesn't mean you're uncaring, and it doesn't mean you're broken. It means your brain learned a survival strategy, one that once protected you. Now you're simply learning a different one, a quieter one, where you don't have to vanish to feel safe, where small steps keep the door open, and sometimes the most powerful change isn't becoming more productive. It's realizing you're allowed to stay present, even when things feel unfinished.